Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar with ENAUTIC. My name is Emily. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce you to Paul and Josh, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are coming to you from today. Birchal is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. As I mentioned, today I am joined by Josh and Paul from ENAUTIC. So Birchal's working with ENAUTIC on their upcoming crowdsource funding campaign. A few of you might be unfamiliar with what crowdsource funding or CSF is, or you might know it as equity crowdfunding, but it's a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia, which allows small businesses and startups to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, as well as wholesale or sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funds from traditional sources such as venture capitalists or banks, companies can turn to the general public, and often that's their communities, to raise money in exchange for equity in their business. Birchal Financial Services is the licensed intermediary for this offer, and I just want to remind everybody who's here today that the information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice or a recommendation to invest. So I would implore you to do your own research and always consider the offer document and general CSF risk warning before investing. If you do need any more information or have any questions, please head to birchal.com or email us at support@birchal.com. So how today's session is going to run, Josh and Paul will take us through a 15-minute presentation, and that will explain a little bit about where they've come from and what they're looking to achieve with this raise. So I've finished talking. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the team at ENAUTIC.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks very much for joining this webinar. Really excited to introduce you to ENAUTIC today and to just let you know what we're about, what we're doing, and I guess what we're raising money for. I'm going to share a short deck with you, if you'll bear with me. Hopefully you can all see that. Should be a green screen with a boat on it. So ENAUTIC is an electric hydrofoil technology company. We're based in Perth. We are about enabling the pivot from traditional boats to electric boats. And we strongly believe that the way to do that is through making them hydrofoil. So traditional boats are noisy, they're polluting, and they have high maintenance costs. And I think a large part of the world believes that the future of boating is electric. However, it's challenging to make electric boats because when you put heavy batteries in them, they sink the boat into the water, and then you've got to push all that weight out of the way constantly. So the way to make boats electric efficiently is to make them hydrofoil boats. Once you put them on hydrofoils, you save about 80% of the resistance. Suddenly you've got a fast boat with good endurance that's fully electric. So just hammering through, I guess, the details of this. Air and water pollution is an issue for boating. It's causing some kinds of craft to be mandated off waterways around the world. They're noisy. They require higher power, very high power compared to cars many times. They have high operating costs. It's a wet ride, generally speaking. It's uncomfortable because waves cause the boat to rock and roll. Heaps and heaps of work that I've been heavily involved with over the years trying to make boats more comfortable. And they produce a wake, which annoys people around the boats. So if you put an electric motor in the boat, you mostly solve the emission problem in that there's virtually no air or water emissions. And you take away a lot of the noise. You've still got the noise of the waves slapping against the hull, but the engine noise is gone. However, all those other problems remain. So once you put an electric boat on hydrofoils, all of those problems are resolved by you save 75 to 90% of the resistance. So that means that your battery powered boat can now have very good range and high speed. There's virtually nothing to do in terms of maintenance of a battery powered craft right through to the point where you change the batteries. So day-to-day maintenance is very small. Because you're sitting up above the waves, it's a dry ride. You don't get splash, you don't get spray. And you're also very comfortable because you're disconnected from the waves, and the hydrofoil flies comfortably above waves. And really importantly, I think, you don't make any wash. So you can operate a hydrofoil craft at speed right next to another water user, like a rowing boat, people on the beach, boats moored nearby, and you don't cause any annoying rock and roll. So I thought we'd just start to introduce Josh and myself. My name's Paul Steinman. I'm a mechanical engineer by training many years ago, and I've spent my life working in naval architecture. Started life as a hydrofoil research scientist for America's Cup campaigns way back in the 90s, and then spent some time at Austral Ships designing as a lead naval architect for their 86-metre high-speed aluminium ferries, and then moved into their ride control group, which was all about trying to make boats comfortable at great expense and with lots of science. And then decided to develop an alternate way of stabilizing boats, which I spent 7 years developing, and then sold that to a company here in Perth. They listed their company a few years later, and then I worked for them for about 10 years in all, and joined ENAUTIC recently as the CEO. So here we are, raising money to go from a technology development company into commercialization. I'll hand it over to Josh to introduce himself.
Thanks, Paul. It's been an exciting journey developing this technology, and my background was in drones, so about a decade in drones, and about a decade in manned electric aircraft, and about half a decade ago we started dabbling with the electric hydrofoil technology, as Paul will give you a bit of a history lesson soon. But it's been great having Paul on for the last 10 or so months and really driving the commercial focus of the company, because the first few years has really been about developing the technology, doing the research, and all the lessons of hard knocks, the school of hard knocks of experimental development. And we've got so much knowledge and technology and IP now that it's at the precipice of commercialization. And Paul's wealth of background in marine commercialization is really complementing our team here as technologists and innovators. So yeah, back to Paul. Thanks.
Thanks, Josh. So I just wanted to give you a bit of, I guess, a timeline of the developments. That most of this is pre my time at ENAUTIC, although I've been following this because the previous CTO of the company is a colleague who worked for me for 10 years. And that's actually the connection between myself and this company, is that for 10 years, the guy who was the primary developer of this technology worked for me, and then asked me to join to come and lead the company with Josh about 10 months ago. So this company the technology started off, it was incubated in a company that at the time had aspirations to build electric aircraft. And they formed a small skunkworks, if you like, or tech group to say, hey, why can't we electrify a boat? They soon worked out that it was really hard to electrify boats because of the energy demand to push the water out of the way. And they very quickly worked out it needed to be a hydrofoil boat. So way back in 2019, ENAUTIC was the first company in the world to have a fully automatically controlled submerged foiling jet ski. And then that evolved into this basically using a rotor-molded canoe body. I think basically they're looking for cheap hulls to put on top of the tech package, which was the foils and the control system. In 21, that evolved further into further evolution of the hydrofoil system and the control system. And then I think it was in about 22, Josh can correct me, but one of the big recreational product OEMs in the world approached the company and said, look, we've had a fantastic experience moving from quad bikes where people sit in line behind each other to these UTVs, which are kind of like a souped up golf cart. They're super popular in the States and around the world. And so they said their experience was when people could sit next to each other and share the experience, they had a much better engagement from their riders. And so ENAUTIC pivoted to this two-seater side-by-side thing, which you see in 2023, and developed what's now called the Wavefly Volare. And a video of that was home shot, no external resources, just an in-house video, was put up on Instagram and received about 5 million views, which for our little company here in Perth, we thought was pretty amazing. And also elicited a bunch of people who reached out and expressed interest to reserve a production slot for that boat when it went into production. So in 2024, we released the Rogue, which is actually the identical tech package, but with a hull arrangement, hull configuration that is in line and looks very much like a jet ski, except that the hull flies about 1 meter above the water. And it's super fun to drive because it banks heavily, and flying 1 meter above the water at 25 knots is really pretty fun. So that's kind of where we're at today. And I guess where we are is we've come out of an intense period of technical development, and we now have a robust prototype that flies on demand, and we're ready to go into a commercial phase. So we're looking at markets that we've sort of siloed into recreation, which is what we're going to address with this virtual raise, with your funding, hopefully. We're definitely focused on recreation now, and a next step with another funding round is to address the commercial market. There's a niche luxury opportunity that's fun, exciting, and looks really cool, but doesn't really represent a huge amount of money for us. But certainly the commercial fast ferries, crew transfer vessels for the offshore wind industry and also the existing oil and gas industry is a really exciting opportunity for us. And we'll be doing that with new funding after we get the recreational products bedded in. Military is something that we're receiving contacts from, and we're responding to those, I guess, somewhat reactively. We're not going to invest a lot of balance sheet in that because the timeframes are really difficult for a startup to manage. But there's some really exciting inquiries coming in through the military space. So for now, we're focused on the left-hand side of the screen, recreation, and that's what this virtual fundraise is all about. So I guess I could be wrong, but in my mind, there's clearly a booming market, small, nascent, but really fast-growing market globally for electric hydrofoil vessels. There's other startups in this space. It's growing really fast. So why invest in ENAUTIC? Of all of those electrical hydrofoil companies, I think the answer is pretty clear in my mind. We have contributed something really substantial to the development of hydrofoil technology. Hydrofoil started off as a series of foils in ladders in the left. It was started on Lake, is it Maggiore in Italy? The Italians started this. And then this V-styled system was developed initially by a German fellow, and that really dominated hydrofoil technology. We had these in Australia. They were all over the world, these so-called surface-piercing hydrofoils. And then in about the same time, about the early 50s, Gibbs and Cox in the US made a small wooden boat that had a fully submerged hydrofoil that didn't pierce the surface of the waves. And that allowed the boat to go really fast without being impacted by wave profile. And the US military got heavily involved in that. And Grumman Aerospace, Lockheed Martin, Boeing Aerospace were all contracted to build several vessels over about a 25-year period. And that became, and it still is, the state of the art, which is basically a flat wing under the water supported by struts. And all of the companies in this new rush to electrify hydrofoils are using that technology. What ENAUTIC has done is flip that on its head and develop this thing called the W-foil. The W-foil is, we have patents pending globally, so there is a roadblock or a moat around us. That technology enables much higher agility and also the ability to foil higher above the waves. I certainly believe it's a game changer, and it's the prime differentiator that we have over the rest of the world. So our version, the implementation of that, we call the W-foil. It's a hydrofoil. That angle, the anhedral angle, doesn't look like much. It's just a simple piece of geometry. But as I'll show you in a little while, it has some pretty amazing impacts. The development of this is highly inspired by jet aircraft design, fighter jet aircraft design. As you see in the top right, civilian and normal aircraft have what's called a dihedral angle. So the wings are sort of sitting up this way. That makes the plane nice and stable. It automatically recovers from banking, but it also reduces the agility of that aircraft. Fighter jets, in order to develop really agile, aggressive, dynamic dogfighting maneuvering, have the angle the other way. And aerospace engineers call that an anhedral angle. That creates something that a pilot can't fly by cable. So if you have a normal joystick control, pilots will always end up in a dive. So they have to be computer controlled. But once the computer control is implemented, you end up with a very dynamic, agile craft that is also can fly stably under computer control. The other thing we've taken from fighter jet design is these, on the bottom right, these wingtip tanks. What they do is they effectively prevent flow leakage from the sides of the wings, and it gives you more lift for a certain wingspan. So if your wingspan is constrained, you get much more lift by putting these tanks at the edge. On a boat, we want to constrain our wingspan to the beam of the boat. So there's not foils and stuff sticking out the side, which makes docking hard and interfacing with other boats difficult. So if your foils are nicely contained inside the boat, then the boat can operate like a normal boat with much higher lift. So that's the W foil. And this is what it does. That simple bend, I don't want to get into science here, but basically for the same amount of foil, so the same cost and the same drag of foil, you end up with much higher roll torque. So you get the same forces, well, actually more with these wing tanks, but the angles, the fact that it's bent out to the side like that means that you get a much bigger lever arm around the center of mass of the boat. So we can create a lot more torque for the same span of hydrofoil. And what's really cool about that is as you foil higher above the water, that advantage increases. So we get a double effect. So what do we get out of that? We get the ability to operate craft with a W foil at higher foiling heights. And simply that means you can operate hydrofoils in bigger waves. As you foil higher, you can also bank more steeply, because what limits your banking is the hull touches the water and you can't bank any further. So you foil higher, you can bank harder, and you can turn more aggressively. Now, you don't always want to turn aggressively, but this gives you the ability to turn really aggressively. So we've implemented that into what we call the wave drive. The wave drive is a modular hydrofoiling system that's effectively like a water jet system or an outboard that you can integrate into another boat. All of our development has been aimed at making this technology easily accessible to third parties, to shipbuilders, to large recreational marine equipment builders, so that they can adopt it easily. So it's made up of a foiling system with two side struts. Those side struts have a retraction mechanism, and there's a battery energy storage system and a helm control system. It can be joystick control or wheel and throttle control, both electrically identical, but obviously depending on user preference. And then that modular system is then able to be integrated into a large range of hulls. So what we've done purely to have a floating boat as a demonstrator is we put it on this white, nice curvy hull that is intended to be a rental craft or a personal mobility craft, but really it's a way for us to prove up our hydrofoil system and our control system. So you can see in the top, in the middle, the foils are extended, and below that you can see the foils retract up into pockets in the hull, and then the boat can be driven onto the beach, it can be driven onto a trailer, it can maneuver in very shallow water. It's actually got a lot less draft than an outboard boat. So the boat can operate in hull mode just like a boat. And then on the right, there's some future concepts that we're in the process of releasing. Really excited about this rib idea because it's just got so much utility and so many use cases. So a key part of our helm station is our hydroflight flight controller. The flight controller has algorithms that are written specifically to utilize the benefits of the W foil. Doesn't foil like other hydrofoils. It requires a specific automatic control system. And that automatic control system is our hydrofoil control system. So the Volare was the first hull developed by us, and most of the videos that you may or may not have seen online, there's plenty of videos if you haven't seen them on our YouTube and Instagram sites, is a two-seater side-by-side, just fun boat. It's intended to be something that you can rent at a resort, or if you live on a waterfront property, it's something that you can take to the shops, up to the golf course, down to your mate's place to have a beer, whatever. It's a small craft. You push a button and it flies. You know, basically a 10-year-old can fly the thing. There's no skill required. So it's whatever the local regulations require in terms of age, can fly it. And the other really cool use case for it is as a toy to go into the garage of a super yacht to replace a jet ski, for instance. It's about the same size. It takes 1 hour to charge these things, up to 1 hour. You can charge them up in 20 minutes if you're just half charging. Yeah, retractable foils, and has the benefit of this super high maneuverability, which makes it really fun. The cool thing about it, though, is you can select flight control settings from 1 to 5. 1 is basically a boring, safe, docile mode that you can go shopping. You can have your granny drive it or whatever, whoever, someone who really wants just a safe ride, right up to level 5, which frankly is pretty scary and takes some getting used to, requires skill and practice, and it really throws you around. So the next version, this Rogue, is a step over jet ski sort of alternative to a jet ski. So it's a jet ski that flies a meter above the water, uses exactly the same tech package, just a different hull configuration. That is in development. We don't have a prototype of that flying yet. When we do, you won't be able to get me on the phone because I'm going to be out in the waves enjoying that thing. I'm super excited about it. We've also developed a variant that's really in response to inquiries from defence operators as a unmanned system that can carry sensor payloads, logistic payloads, people, lots of use cases for it as an unmanned craft. And we've demonstrated that unmanned operation recently, just at a defence conference here in Perth, and got a lot of excitement in that area. So just run through a few features of the craft. Really simple to operate. A lot of people that I speak to think, oh, hydrofoils are super technical, difficult things to maintain and operate. You just push a button, it flies up to height. You're sitting a meter above the water, and then you steer it and you change the speed. It's easier to drive than a boat. When you want to stop, you just let go of the controls, and the thing lands on the water safely and stops in a very short stopping distance. You can move from side to side. You can have a big guy on one side and a little kid on the other. The flight control system handles all that. It's a fully autonomous computer-controlled flight controller. So you just need to tell it when you want to steer. Otherwise, it'll do all the work for you. There's a push-button retract. So if you're approaching the beach, you just say retract foils, and the foils come up and drive the thing onto the beach. There's a bunch of other features on there, which I guess are all on our website. And I can answer questions on that later. So a really cool thing that happened to us as a small tech company was we put this video up on Instagram, and about 160, a bit more than 160 people reached out and said, hey, we really want one of these, and we'll give you $100 to get on a waiting list. So they have become, I guess, for us, a future client list for when we do go into production, which is what we're planning to do with this virtual money. And also a group of people we can reach out to and learn from and ask about their preferences and price tolerance, all of those things. And actually feedback from them is really driving this, RIB development. We've got a lot of global resellers that are sitting there, frankly, tapping their fingers saying, come on, guys, go into production. We want to sell these things. And we are lucky to have a list of people that we can sell our first batches to. And as I mentioned, there's a bunch of military interest that we're responding to reactively. That's a short list of a bunch of awards. One of our young design engineers is mad keen on applying for awards, and he seems to win a lot of them. So it's good fun. So what's next? So that's basically that. Recreational craft is what this virtual raise is all about. It's what we're going to spend your investment on developing and putting into the marketplace. The future for us is, I guess, moving up I guess simplistically speaking, moving up into larger boats. We have what we call a W foil system, which is the W foil at the back and a more traditional T foil at the front. The same arrangement of battery electric storage system, helm station and height sensors. That then gives us options into, I guess the 8 to 15 meter kind of boat. There's a large variety of those that we're talking to various manufacturers and operators about options for that. Down the bottom right, there's an insertion rib which has a military application. I'm really keen on the Venice taxis, but that's an evolving space. We don't have a contract in that space yet, but we certainly are keen on doing that. And then moving up from that, a W foil forward and aft is a perfect solution for a catamaran. So catamaran, I see catamaran fast ferries as being the biggest, and crew transfer vessels, which are a variant of a fast ferry. I see them as our biggest dollar value market going forward in the years to come. Yeah, so I can answer questions on that as we go forward. But that's a huge growth area. There's lots and lots and lots of aluminium high-speed catamaran fast ferries in the world. Many of them are over 40 years old. They're very polluting. They create wake. They consume an awful amount of fuel. I see a massive opportunity for us in the future to go and replace those with foiling fast ferries. Talked about military applications. So here's just a snapshot. Fast personnel transport is effectively a fast ferry. There's many of those in operation around the world using catamaran hull forms. Lots of opportunity for us to get into that personnel transport space. On the left, special ops insertion, just a way to get our highly trained special ops guys ashore, dry, unseen, and comfortably. And then the range at the bottom is commercial military applications for our little recreational range using the wave drive.
Thanks so much, Paul. That was super informative, really, really interesting to see the capabilities in the future as well.